The story begins with an ordinary man obsessed with the truth. For years, the city has been falling apart due to pollution. Diseases, deformities, and all kinds of natural quirks have turned the city he calls home into a nest of freaks. He is convinced that the blame lies with one person. That night, JJ, his partner, arrives with something interesting, a portable hard drive that could contain valuable information, although they need to decrypt it first. John gets to work immediately and in no time finds something terrifying. The drive not only has evidence, but also includes images of the places where the company BTH dumps radioactive waste. This hard drive is the holy grail of evidence and the victory they so desperately need. But JJ wasn't as clever as she thought, and the freaks from BTH followed her to their hideout. These are ruthless murderers under the command of a leader, and falling into their clutches means death. And if you don't believe me, ask John. Thanks to John's sacrifice, JJ was able to escape, but the disk was destroyed, and she was only able to flee with a small fragment. We change the scene to meet Winston, a father who has gone through a difficult time. His wife died less than a year ago, and now it's just him and his son Whit, a normal boy who doesn't cause much trouble, although he always seems a little sad. After eating the unburnt parts of the breakfast Winston prepared, they both go outside and find a guy who refuses to give Mrs. Daisy her cat back. His name is Dennis, and he's been trying to buy the old woman's property for several months, but she has always rejected his offers. As expected, Dennis is a scumbag, and to make the old woman suffer, he almost kills her cat by throwing it into the street. Wade asks his father why he didn't do anything, and he replies that sometimes it's better not to intervene. In this city, dangers abound, and he doesn't want to get into trouble. In a city where the entire economy depends on a single company, it can practically do as it pleases, and no one dares to act. The waste dumped by BTH into the rivers and parks has turned everything into a toxic place. But speaking of their floors, they are gleaming, a feat by Winston, who is the janitor. Later that day, Winston goes to the doctor to get his test results, where he is told that his brain is almost melted from inhaling chemicals from the company. They estimate he has a year to live at most. With the worst news he could receive, Winston sets out to get support from his insurance to pay for a treatment that could lengthen his life. But as expected, the company completely harms him, and his insurance does not cover that treatment. It's no wonder that Bob, the leader of BTH, is a despicable person who has used the city as his testing ground in his quest to become the perfect human. However, his brother Fritz is proof that they have failed too many times in their search for perfection. Bob is furious about Fritz's mistake in losing the hard drive. He gives him 48 hours to correct his mistake and find JJ. At school, Wade tries to do something he really likes at the talent show auditions, but since his father didn't go with him, he doesn't muster enough courage and is humiliated. That night, when he returns home, Winston tries to drown his sorrows in alcohol due to the bad news, especially having a negative jump in his bank account. Although he tries to apologize, Winston doesn't know how to tell his son about the illness, so he decides to keep the information to himself for the moment. To cheer him up, he does something, but forgets the documents on the table and has to lie to him, assuring him that everything is fine. As soon as Wade falls asleep, Winston goes out to continue drinking and deal with his problems alone. On the other side of the city, Bob meets with Stockings, a criminal boss with whom he has business and many debts. Stockings is furious. Bob doesn't have the money to settle outstanding accounts, and his company is not enough to cover the debt. Bob asks for a deadline and returns to his table where he is approached by Winston, who infiltrated as a waiter to talk to him. Winston is honest with his boss, for whom he has worked for 13 years, and hopes that his health insurance can cover his expenses, but he is deceived and kicked out the back door. It is a lesson he did not expect, since Winston believed all the lies the company said about his perfect boss. Furious, he returns to the company and uses the faithful mop he has wielded for 13 years to spread toxic waste all over the place. The only problem is that his plan crossed paths with JJ's, who was also present sabotaging the company. A few minutes later, Winston arrives at the vault with his radioactive mop and threatens the guards. With all the money he can carry for the moment, he leaves the place but crosses paths with JJ. Jay, who was fleeing from the freaks led by Freds. Both try to escape from the place, but Winston cannot jump the fence and is caught by the freaks. One of them shoots him right in the face, killing him before he hits the ground. However, seeing that they ruined it, Fritz gets angry and sends them the photo of JJ again, so they know who to look for. Instead of accepting their mistake, the freaks throw Winston's body into a deposit full of the same waste that he used on the mop, unleashing a radical transformation. A few minutes later, Winston is expelled from the pipes as something completely different, something not human. Feeling scared, he tries to return home but doesn't want to scare anyone, so he tries to enter through the service staircase. There, he sees Wade very worried and tries to approach him, but this does not go well. Winston falls on Dennis's car, who had returned to continue threatening Mrs. Daisy. Fennis doesn't take 2 seconds to pull out his gun and shoot him, but the bullet barely pierces his skin and is expelled shortly after. Filled with anger, Winston attacks Dennis and takes his arm with such force that with the villain's arm in his hands, witnesses do not take long to record what is happening and call the police to catch Winston, who ends up fleeing into the forest while a mob follows him, ready to tear him to pieces or perhaps burn him at the stake. The next morning, after running all night, Winston finally sees what he has become. But what surprises him most is an old man who calls himself the Wise Man, who offers him breakfast and shows no fear of his appearance. It turns out that the Wise Man lives in the forest and has witnessed everything that BTH's waste can do, from mutant birds to fish. Nothing surprises him anymore. The Wise Man shows him the mop he found, that weapon, which is now his favorite weapon, and gives it back to him so that he can do what is necessary and get his son back. The news is full of videos of the mutant who mutilated a man the night before, and W could not be more scared. But in the center, something more interesting is happening. A group of robbers have barricaded themselves in a restaurant and have hostages. The police are trying to handle the situation, but it is getting out of hand and they need a hero, someone who does what is necessary to save people, but without fear of destroying the bodies of the villains in a way that has never been seen before. Against all odds, the hostages leave the place safely, and Winston is hailed as a hero. W sees his father on television being applauded and cheered, although no one knows what he has become. Dennis watches television and tells his father that that monster was the one who tore off his arm. So Stockings sends his men to hunt Winston. Meanwhile, Bob is furious. His company has lost hundreds of millions after it was confirmed that BTH's waste created that creature. Now they have serious problems and demand solutions. In his laboratory, he orders his men to work. He wants to know the secret of that creature and how to replicate it. Not every day one wakes up bulletproof and with super strength. At White's house, JJ appears to tell the little boy everything she knows, including that his father is a heroic mutant and everything related to BTH. Shortly after, the freaks arrive with the intention of taking him to use him as bait, but JJ manages to get him out of there safely. Winston appears, and while he tries to explain to his son why he lied to him about his illness, someone interrupts them. It's Stockings' men. They are there to get revenge for what happened to Dennis. JJ takes Wade away, but not long after the freaks catch up with them and shoot the girl in the stomach. Frit takes the boy. They plan to use him to catch his father, but Winston faces other problems, such as the fact that he was shot with a shotgun. As best he can, he runs to an abandoned building and hides among the garbage. Then he gets rid of the villains one by one, using the body of one of them as bait. He dismembers them with extraordinary ease. Basically, he is a mini Hulk, but bloodier. Then he steals their car, finds JJ, and rescues her. Since hospitals are a problem, he takes her to the Wise Man, who supposedly knows medicine, but in the end, he turns out to be a fraud. and Winston believes he can cure her using some of his blood. After all, his wounds heal thanks to it. Once Winston's blood enters JJ's bloodstream, she begins to have strange visions and to writhe. When Stoking finds out that BTH's waste created the monster that dismembered his son, he calls him to tell him that his time is up. He wants revenge or to kill everyone. Luckily, Bob has Wade, so it's almost certain that Winston will come for him and Stockings will finally be able to have his encounter. Returning with Winston, his blood seems to have worked and JJ is still alive. Although she feels strange and fears that something bad will happen to her, they don't waste time and go after the freaks who think they are a rock band and have a festival in the center. With the first one who dies, Winston carries out his bloody hunt. Then he captures a giant and discovers his little secret. This one tells them where they have Wade, so it's time for Winston to get his son back. The place is full of guards, but that's no problem for Winston. However, something else happens. The duo falls into a trap, and Bob manages to put them to sleep with a kind of gas. By the time Winston wakes up, he is tied with chains, and the scientists are about to begin their experiments to discover his secret. The first thing they do is take a good dose of blood and fluids, repeating the process several times until Bob has enough to start the tests. On the floor above, Stockings is losing patience. He wants to kill Winston, but Bob wants more time. So to finally face his partner, he must drink an entire glass of Winston's blood, and the transformation does not take long to manifest. When his secretary hears the screams, Bob is no longer the same. He has become something else, and his assistant wants the same, but they can't decipher the catalyst, so they plan to use Wade. This idea does not please Freds, who may be bad, but is not capable of experimenting on an innocent child, so he ends up being punished. When Winston hears that they plan to use Wit, he gets angry and tries to break the chains, but he doesn't have the strength. It is then that he remembers that his urine is like acid, and he just has to aim well to break the chains. Once he manages to escape, he runs into Bob, who is now a horrible beast, but maintains the same strength and a more perverse heart than before. The fight is full of action, and Winston manages to burn the villain's face with his mop, who gets angry and attacks him mercilessly. With the help of JJ, Winston destroys Bob. And shortly after, Wade appears with Freds, who opposed his brother and saved an innocent person. Winston wakes up in the hospital a few hours later. His wounds have healed, and the government considers him a national hero for exposing BTH and all its crimes. And best of all, his brain is in perfect condition, so he won't die and he still has his son. A happy ending in every way, at least for the moment.